Welcome back to Reimagine 2020. I'm Yonah Hochhauser, and today I'm joined by Brad Kam, co-founder at Unstoppable Domains. Brad, thanks for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, first, for the viewers out there who aren't familiar, why don't you take us through what is Unstoppable Domains and how did it come about?
Sure. So Unstoppable Domains is onboarding the world to the decentralized web. We've built domain registries like .crypto that are on blockchains, not part of regular DNS. We've also got a registrar, Unstoppable Domains, where you can go and buy domains, you can manage them, launch some websites. And the whole idea here is that the regular internet is censored, broken, extremely hackable, and leading to authoritarianism and all kinds of bad stuff around the world. And it doesn't have to be that way. There's an alternative now that we've got blockchains, now that we've got smart contract platforms, now that we've got peer-to-peer storage networks like IPFS and others. So there's alternatives now. There's no reason to be relying on the old tech that's been causing all of these problems. So I think this idea of having censorship-resistant domain names, of having blockchain-based domain names, has been floating around in the crypto world for a long time. I think the trigger for the company was that it started to become possible, that Ethereum smart contracts started getting quite good, applications started launching, the ecosystem started developing, it could start to support real applications, and a domain registry could have a lot of users, so it would need certain stability, certain tools. And so when it started to become possible, my co-founder Matt went to work building on domain names.
Now, it's interesting that you focus on the uncensorship and the website aspect of it. Unstoppable Domains, obviously, it's in the name. But how important is it to you guys and to the cryptosphere and crypto adoption as a whole, the aspect of those readable crypto addresses? And I'll let you explain a little bit about what I mean in terms of how users can send crypto to each other with an easy to read address.
Yeah, so the way to think about it is just like with the traditional internet, back when you had IP addresses, you had these crazy numbers, you couldn't use them, there was no way to interact with internet protocols until you had some kind of naming. So the same is true for blockchains and other crypto networks. Like, how are you going to be able to easily send money to people? How are you going to be able to find content? How are you going to be able to do all of this stuff unless you have a naming system? So one of the things you hit on here is payments. And I think the thing for people to keep in mind about domain names on the blockchain that are very different than traditional domain names is they can do more stuff. So you can use them to send crypto. You can use them to visit a decentralized website. It can also be the place where you send me a message, like a decentralized email. So it's converging a whole bunch of different things all into this one tool, this one domain name. So I've got brad.crypto. You can send me Bitcoin. You can send me Ethereum. You can just type it into a wallet, type in brad.crypto. It'll find my address and it'll send me the money. You can also go check out my blog at brad.crypto. You could also send me a peer-to-peer message at brad.crypto.
Wow. Now, when you speak about the fact these are uncensorable websites and how it compares to traditional websites, we highlighted the pros of having a website on the blockchain. It has a bunch of functionality, and you can send and pay with crypto. But how is it actually stored? A traditional website is on a server somewhere with all the content, all the elements of that website. Is all the elements of these blockchain websites actually on the blockchain?
No, and so what's happening is there's two things you're using. So you're using the domain name. The domain name is a NFT. It's an ERC-721 token on the blockchain. You store it inside of an Ethereum wallet. So just like a CryptoKitty or any number of other NFTs. And then you're signing a message with your private key, and you're writing information to the blockchain associated with that domain name. So these are just text fields. So it's like, BTC address equals this. You also can write IPFS hash. So IPFS is a decentralized storage network where when you post content, you can have multiple people all store a copy of the content or store a piece of the file for you. So you have hundreds or thousands of different computers or people that you're relying on for your hosting. And that is very different than going and paying Amazon Web Services who can just switch you off. So it's the combination of a blockchain domain plus a website on decentralized storage network that equals a decentralized website.
And how does it look for the end user? Would my mother, who doesn't understand blockchain, if she was on a blockchain website, would she recognize or realize that this website was different, interacted differently, or would interact just like a regular website would?
Yeah, you can access and use it just like a regular website would. The difference is that browsers need to opt to support them. So Opera browser has supported .crypto. There are other browsers that are looking at it as well, but unlike regular DNS, you need to have your applications decide to support it. So that's the big difference. But if you were to go to myetherwallet.crypto, for example, or switcheo.crypto, the exchange, or kyber.crypto, the swap, those would work just like, I don't know what their actual traditional URLs are. But those are exact replicas just on the decentralized web, and they work the same. So, yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so the whole idea here is that you as the user, the thing that you're going to notice that's different is the domain name registry will be different because the traditional domain name registries are on the old system. So it's new registries that are coming out to provide these new features like .crypto. And so that's something new. But otherwise, yeah, you can just go and view websites. They'll be able to do new things because the architecture is so different. One crazy thing is you can have a group of people control a website instead of one person. So right now, I go to GoDaddy. I've got a registered user. You can have a DAO control the website and vote on what the website content is, what should be the top story of the day, et cetera, et cetera. And so it actually means that there's no one person in charge of potentially a super popular property on the internet. And all of this, the context here, the reason why we think this matters, the reason why we want people using the decentralized web is because the way the traditional web works is imposing values, the values of specific people or the interests of specific powerful people, and getting to determine who can publish and who can't. And it's a big problem. So there have been issues where the Spanish government, when they were opposed to the Catalonian independence movement, they were using the .cat registry in order to post websites to organize people. And the Spanish government went and shut down the registry and arrested the CTO for sedition. When the Libyan government moved and became more religious, they started taking down porn websites that used .ly. And a lot of people use .ly because they think it's cool. Well, in reality, it turns out that the Libyan government gets to weigh in on the policies of websites all around the world. And of course, there's issues with .com as well. There's issues with music companies forcing websites down without courts and all kinds of stuff. And it all comes down to the fact that the domain name registries require custodians, and people's domains can be taken without their permission. Because that's possible, changes the entire power of the system. Same is true for hosting services. The Turkish government has a law that there's 150 words that you're not allowed to post on any website. One of them is gay, another one of them is naked. So there are moral values, not even crimes, just moral values that are determining what can be shown to millions and millions of people and what can't. And those are the places where it's in dispute. There's plenty of places around the world where you wouldn't dare publish in the first place for reasons that are probably clear to your audience. So the way the internet works right now is empowering the people that are taking away free speech and preventing us from being able to trade with one another all around the world and all sorts of things that are just beneficial to everyone. So we think this is super important.
It's kind of crazy because, that's the exact antithesis of what the internet was supposed to be, which was a free flowing exchange of ideas. And, where was that shifting point in your mind? When did the internet go from, hey, this is a place where everyone can go and share ideas to, okay, now this is another place where the government is maintaining and regulating control over what we see and what we think?
think it's been a slow slide. I mean, I'm not, I wasn't around for the invention of the internet, but I was using it in the early 90s when I was, 12, and I feel like I saw some of the phases of it, at least as a user. And I think that the story that was being told and the story that we believed was that it really was going to be this peer-to-peer open future. Everybody was going to be able to get access to information, all this stuff. And I really think that it was going in that direction. And there were some technical problems. There were issues like there was no payment system. Like blockchains hadn't been invented yet. There was no way to send money over the internet. So that created a problem and also an opportunity for banks and other financial institutions. And then there were issues with the way that data is stored. It wound up being that companies like Facebook and YouTube would store all the data. And then because they store all the data, they're responsible for the data. And then they have to decide, okay, well, this content is okay and this content is not okay. And then they wind up taking you off the internet entirely. They also wind up deciding where the line is for free speech. And I don't think that either of those companies set out to be the determiner of what's appropriate to say on the internet and what's not. That's not what they were trying to make. But they're being forced to do that because of the business model. And I think the business model is just because the distributed tech didn't exist yet. So I don't think that there was any malintent. I just think that not all the pieces of the puzzle had been invented yet. And so the internet moved forward and it went through this commercialization phase. And everyone has been getting squeezed, but it's been going slowly. Like it's been maybe a 20-year evolution. And I think when that happens, you don't realize how bad it is when it changes very, very slowly each day until eventually, 20 years later, you look back and you go, wow, that was totally not what they were pitching. Yeah. And I think what's been so crazy about it, especially since started working on this company in the middle of 2018, I feel like when you were trying to talk to people about how broken the internet was in 2018, people kind of got it, but it wasn't the same. There's been such a shift just in the past couple of years in terms of people understanding what's been going on with social media companies, seeing all the censorship in the United States, seeing all of the just this core problem of how much power those companies have, how it's being used. Like it's on people's minds now. And I think that's another thing. I think it makes sense that it's on people's minds because the decentralized web is being built, day by day, piece by piece. It's super duper early. It's going to take 20, 30 years. But so there's that narrative going, which is like, you're actually hearing reasonable sounding people talking about how it's actually happening. We're actually moving forward. You can look back 6 months ago and there is technological progress. Tools are being built. It's getting better. That plus on the political side and then the old internet side, things are getting worse. Like Barack Obama's getting hacked on Twitter. Just imagine, if you'd had decentralized Twitter and there had been the requirement of signing a message with a private key in order to do something, then you would have only, exposed maybe one account instead of dozens or hundreds or whatever. Like it's all over the internet, these problems. So you've got possibility on the blockchain side, and then you've got catastrophic breaking of the old system that everyone's paying attention to now. So it's an interesting time, and I think that those two things happening at once is what makes me kind of bullish.
Mm-hmm. And I think you raised an important point there where, like for instance, the Twitter hack, where because of the centralization of power there, and they had so-called super users that enabled employees to then access and gain total access to top accounts, send tweets out. That was exactly how the hack happened. Is this when you have centralized control, you also have centralized points of failure, and obviously that will lead to nefarious actors trying to take advantage. But besides just, you spoke a little bit about the state of the traditional internet and how it really is in a downward spiral, I would say. And people are realizing that, especially when we're talking about the big companies like Facebook and Google, where people, it's not just censorship, but even filtration, where it's not them saying, hey, you're not allowed to watch this. Obviously, we'd imagine if we were North Korea, the government would not allow us to see things. But people are starting to realize, and you hit upon this, that even in America, even in so-called free countries, these big companies are filtering and deciding what we see. And people are realizing that, you know, they don't really have a choice in what's reaching their minds and their eyeballs. And I do think that this is somewhere where the decentralized web does have a tremendous opportunity. And I want to switch gears a little bit, but on a similar vein, because it does involve all these same companies, Facebook and Google, where they host a lot of, you know, conversation, a lot of chats. You know, there's Gmail, there's WhatsApp, there's Facebook Messenger. I mean, these messaging services pretty much host a vast majority of the online conversation in the world today. And they are centralized, and governments ask for permission to see these messages, gaining access to private conversations. Where do you see you know, Unstoppable Domain's role in this, and blockchain's role in protecting the privacy of conversations of citizens of the world?
So there's something that I think is there's something you can say pretty optimistically about chat messages, which is that they're text files, and therefore they're small, and therefore they're a really great early use case for decentralized web tech, because it's easy, much easier than almost anything else, because these are the smallest files. So it's actually quite, I don't want to say easy, but I don't want to say easy in the general sense, but easier than most of the other things that you would do on the decentralized web. So a few weeks ago, we built what I would say is a prototype protocol, decentralized chat protocol. And the way it works is that your domain name is your username, and you sign a message with your private key in order to log in. And so, you know, you use MetaMask or whatever. You sign a message, you type in your domain, you sign a message with your private key to log in. Then it just works like basically like decentralized Slack chat. You can have group chats, you can have direct chats. It's all encrypted. It's all peer-to-peer. You don't have to worry about Unstoppable Domains shutting down as a company. You can store your own chats. We have an app that we built on top of the protocol, but the idea is that apps can all build on these protocols, and then you as the user have your chats across any app you go to. It'll be the same inbox. You don't have Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, Gmail, this Gmail, whatever. You don't have all these separate inboxes with separate usernames and separate contacts. It's all unified into one, controlled by the user, and you don't have to care if an app goes down, if an app shuts down, if an app gets hacked, any of that stuff. None of that matters anymore, and no one can listen, and no one can listen in. It's encrypted, so that's the way the entire internet is going to work. But with chat, it can actually go there first. And I think, you know, there was, you know, a whole bunch of conversations in the crypto community after the TikTok and now the WeChat ban in the US. And the whole reason now, I'm not commenting on the solutions made. I think that the politics of what's going on around that has nothing to do with the tech. The people who are doing that stuff, they don't care at all about the tech. That's not what they're focused on. But the whole point here is that those companies store the messages on their servers, and therefore, because they're companies based in China, they can give those messages directly to the government quite easily, and therefore, Chinese government gets access to these chats. But if they didn't store them on their servers, if users controlled them, then it wouldn't be a problem. So the reason why we're having this issue with global commerce is because the structure is wrong, and it's not good for WeChat either. It's not good for the apps. Like, that's a huge security problem to have to store that stuff. So, like, you know, it's better for you to be able to just go and build an app and not have to worry about that part. So there's going to be a lot of pressure in this direction, because it's going to ultimately be better for all involved. And I think that's where it goes, is that rather than having one app that locks you in because they control all your data, you have 20 apps who are all competing for your attention, and you give them access to your data. And if you get mad at them the next day, then you turn them off and you move on to a new one, and it's no big deal. And it doesn't matter what happens to them. It doesn't matter how they feel about you either.
And in this situation, you know, in a blockchain situation, in this protocol that you guys wrote, all the chats are stored on the user's phone, right? Not on any server.
They're stored on the user's phone, or they're stored on a decentralized hosting network, or both, like a combo, where you would then be able to pay to store backups on a decentralized hosting network. And what's happening there is that people are storing encrypted copies of it. So they can't read your chats either, but they're storing and serving up the encrypted files.
And you know, it's pretty much a play, because listen, between people like me and you, we understand the technology, we understand, you know, where these things are heading, and we choose the side of let me put in the effort, let me, you know, build the technology and leverage a new technology to secure my privacy. But many people, most mainstream people, don't necessarily think like that. I mean, right now, the current way that the internet works, it's an exchange. I give this big company, or I give this tech company, my data, and they provide me with a free service. I get to use their Android operating system for free. I get to use their Gmail service for free. And in return, I give them my private data to sell. And whether or not people actively recognize this transaction, that's the transaction that's happening. And I think for a lot of everyday people, this is a transaction that historically they were willing to make. Do you feel that there is a shift happening here where people either A, are fully realizing the extent of this transaction and how valuable their data is? And number two, has there been a kind of an unbalancing of this transaction where they started taking and gaining a lot more control in that deal than historically has been the case?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of elements that are going on in the background. I think there's a lot more awareness and there's a lot more greed. And so we're seeing both of those things at the same time. Like, you know, you used to watch a lot fewer ads on YouTube 5 years ago than you did, and 10 years ago, less than that before. Like, we all know that it's getting greedier over time. So that's part of it. I think the other part of it is possibility. But if we're talking about why is the regular user going to switch, I think that's going to be a later phase. And I think it's going to be all about better, faster, cheaper. So if the Facebook of today, gives it to you for free, the Facebook of tomorrow is going to pay you to sit there and watch those, and watch those ads or whatever. It's going to be better, and it's going to do new things. It's going to do more things, and it's going to be more interesting and profitable for you to do it. That's the reason why, you're going to switch. But even before that happens, and where we're at right now, I would say, is the crypto enthusiast phase. And I think we're actually going to be here for a few years, because the crypto enthusiast community is, 100 million people. It's at least, we don't have exact numbers, but estimates in that area. Market cap is almost 400 billion now. So it's a community with resources and the ability to experiment. And there's a long way we can go making crypto payments better, making decentralized applications like our DeFi smart contracts and all these other things, make them censorship resistant all the way down to the website level, make chat work inside of wallets and all these other applications that we're crypto applications that we're already using. Like, doing that first, I think that's the next step. That's where we're most focused right now, because when we do that, that's going to show the world the power of the alternative. And then I think from there, what's going to happen is it's going to be people around the world who can't use the current system. It's going to be people who, for various reasons, and this is, 2/3 of the world, according to Freedom House, does not have access to a free internet. So we're talking about most of the planet when we're talking about the size of the market that's looking for new things. And just think about how few people can use something like Shopify, because you need to have, payment processor and credit card and all of these types of things that require all kinds of approvals. So there's a limited part of the world that is getting access to the current internet, and they're going to want an alternative once it's good enough. But the crypto people are going to have to prove that first. So I think next few years is probably going to be crypto people, mostly crypto people. I think the next wave after that is going to be the people around the world that really need it. And I think that the third wave is going to be, back to the US and Europe and some of these places that already have, pretty high functioning internet tools, when this becomes just better, faster, cheaper. But social media, I think, will be in that second phase, because social media, like, we're having a problem right now. Like, what we need to say is getting taken down, and it's for a kind of an interesting reason. I hope hopefully this is, stop me if you think this is a tangent. It's just what's happening with forcing Facebook to have to decide what's okay to say and what's not means that we only get to have one version of the conversation on the internet. Whereas in the future, Facebook has every right to say, this is our line for free speech. But there's going to be another 40 applications with different lines, and they're all going to coexist. And we're all going to have different versions of what we think is okay to say and what communities we want to be a part of and where those lines are drawn. And they're all going to exist together at the same time. And it's all going to be able to be played out. Whereas right now, only one version gets to play out. And so it's not even that Facebook's doing something so wrong. It's just that they've set themselves up to where they're the only game in town. And that's what's messing us up, is the lack of competition.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that's a very good point. And, you know, if like it happens, like you said, where there is more competitors and everyone gets their own version of what is right, is there a kind of a danger of just building a bunch of echo chambers where, hey, I utilize this decentralized social platform, or just this social platform as a competitor to Facebook, and this is what's okay in their mind? Is there a danger of that, or are we essentially living in the era of echo chambers, because that is already what the algorithms for Facebook and Google already push us towards, to kind of see and hear what we already expect and want to hear?
I mean, what if there's 30 echo chambers and they're all accessible to you at the flip of a switch? What if you get grumpy one day and move to a different echo chamber? What if you get happy and move to another? Like, if you put the power of that into the user's hands, you're gonna have so much more crossover. Like, imagine what an echo chamber is like in a country where state media is most of what you have access to, and state approved newspapers. Like, imagine what that echo chamber is like versus the, just wealth of interesting things that are going to start popping up and happening all across the world. And it doesn't mean that one piece of content can't penetrate the ecosystem of another just because the filters are different. They can move freely within each other. So, I mean, I think you're already seeing, TikTok is a weird subject right now, but things are going viral all over the world much more easily there than they have almost anywhere else, because there haven't been any barriers like language. So I just think that there's going to be more virality, hyper virality. It's going to be like, people think it's too much information now. Just imagine what happens when we plug in all the people that aren't able to participate. What if we 5x the number of people that are talking?
My knowledge is a little lacking here, so maybe you could help, shed the light here for me. But we're talking about, the potential that this technology has for these countries that are already limiting the internet, limiting access to their citizens, deciding what their citizens could see. But doesn't all these blockchain solutions, these Web 3.0 solutions already, they run on the same internet structure? Couldn't these governments block whatever may be, the IP, the pipeline, whatever may be, access to even these decentralized protocols?
So right now, because they have because the domain name registries have custodians, they can take down the .com websites of dApps and things like that. Because they're stored on Amazon Web Services, they can be shut down, or because they're stored on hosting services elsewhere. But once you move those things to, if you move your domain name to a blockchain and then you move your hosting content to a decentralized storage network, then they can't, so long as you've got a browser or some other way to access the information. Because what you're really doing is you're requesting a file from the blockchain itself. Because your domain name is pointing to a file on IPFS, and so you need to go ask the blockchain, what's the file? And so you need to have that access, and that's it. And it could be an open source browser, it could be a resolver that you build yourself. Hopefully it'll be, dozens and dozens of browsers that want to support the decentralized web. And I think a lot of them do, because a lot of them were motivated by the same things we were talking about earlier, the internet of the 1990s that everyone thought they were building. So I think browsers, by and large, are the gatekeepers here. They're the ones that are gonna really push this, really push this forward for the average person around the world. But I think there's going to be multiple ways that you'll get access. And as long as you have that, then I don't see how they can stop it. I mean, unstoppable domains was we meant it literally.
Yeah, can't stop them. Now, you talk about the browsers being the gatekeepers, and in March 2020, the popular browser Opera became the first major browser to integrate the .crypto domain extension. You guys also have a Chrome extension. Has there been, have you guys approached these browsers to get, support from them, locally, or are they resistant and they say, no, build an extension? Or is there actual talks to say, hey, I could search in a .crypto, into their browser, into the browser URL and it'll pop up?
Well, so the nice thing about extensions is that it's something that we can do on our own. So, no matter, browsers operate on long timelines. So we want to make sure that there's good extensions, no matter what major browser you're using, that it's easy for you to access decentralized websites. So that's more like an in the meantime solution, that it's good to have that. There's also a lot of extensions that people already have, VPNs and other things like that are looking at integrating. So there's a lot of different ways to go about it. DNS resolvers like Cloudflare are also looking at the decentralized web. So I think there's potential there with other ecosystem partners. But in terms of the browsers themselves, we're talking to a lot of them, and broadly speaking, I would say that they are into it, that they like the idea of the decentralized web, and there are some that are really dialing in. I think that the biggest ones are probably going to be the slowest because they don't do things until markets are bigger. So we're going to have to grow the market before Chrome does this, and that's fine. There's also a ton of Chrome extensions. But for example, something that was pretty exciting recently, Mozilla created a Fix the Internet program. We were actually part of it. We did the chat protocol as part of that program. But the idea was a call to startups who are building decentralized web tech to see how a browser can help. So a browser that was kind of, is trying to be sort of the moral backbone of the browser web community has been digging into this stuff. And I think that's a very good sign. Of course, there's, Brave Browser, which is a, decentralized web leader. So there's a lot of big players that are taking it seriously. It's going to be, it's going to be a long journey, but, piece by piece.
Yeah. Well, I mean, especially, you mentioned that we're so early on. It's not a big market. And, I was wondering, I wanted to ask you, it's very common in the traditional web where, people will try to predict what domain names would be popular, and they'll buy them in advance to try to own that domain name. Are you guys seeing that with the .crypto? Or are people, rushing? Is Facebook .crypto? I'm sure that's already taken, but is there a buy-up of .crypto domains to try to preempt when it goes mass market?
Yeah, people are totally doing that sort of stuff. And I think the thing is that domain names are this relatively understood concept. Like we were talking again, like I bought a bunch of .com domains in the late 1990s. Like I was watching it pretty closely. I bought a bunch. I think I only sold like 2. I didn't do a very good job. But it's definitely something that a lot of people are familiar with and think about. I would say the most common behavior is, I get like my name or maybe like a pseudonym or something. I get my company name and maybe like a couple of other random, ideas I had or something like that. There's a small number of people that like to buy a bunch and are clearly trying to buy up, things that they think are going to be valuable in the future. In terms of company brands, though, those are blocked off through a trademark process and are intended for the brands. And that's to prevent phishing and other kinds of bad behavior. It's sort of a standard in the domain industry where you give those companies right of first refusal. If they don't take it, it's different, but that's the general philosophy there. So it's more like people buying up generic terms or a lot of crypto-related terms, a lot of political-related terms, things like that.
And have any of those companies, big companies, taken you guys up on the offer? Does Facebook right now own Facebook.crypto and Google own Google.crypto?
I can't confirm any specific, any specific buyers or anything like that, but there have been several Fortune 1000 companies that have claimed domains. Yes.
Mhm.
Um,
And now, yeah, that's very exciting. Has the recent bull run in crypto actually seen or caused a bull run on domains as well?
so I'm not sure all of the time. We have been seeing a steady uptick since January. We saw a much faster rise starting in May, June. Things started really accelerating. So, I mean, it's, since the earlier in the year, I think it's maybe like three times the rate. So it's grown massively since the beginning of this year. Uh, a lot of that was before this bull run, um, but it may be that there were it may be that the crypto prices themselves moved later. I'm not sure what all of the factors are. I would like to think it's because of all these cool decentralized web tools that people are able to play with now, like a blog tool and chat and all these other things. I'm sure maybe the crypto price also has something to do with it.
Mhm. Now, right now so far we've been speaking about the average person, the retail user, trying to decentralize the internet for the world. But do you see any institutional interest in this type of solutions that you guys are offering? Whether because an institution wants an easier to read crypto address, or whether they're trying to utilize, however they may utilize it, but trying to utilize this idea of censor-proof websites.
Well, so if you're a crypto company and you're doing any kind of regular transferring of crypto, then domain names for crypto payments is relevant to you. And wallets and exchanges are looking at this kind of tech and are figuring out how to integrate it. So I think that's one category that's definitely looking at it. I think it's mostly the on the company side, it's mostly the dApps trying to build essentially backups of their applications. In terms of like the bigger companies, I think that's more like the phase three we were talking about. The like once it's better, faster, cheaper. That's why some big company is going to migrate their back end to decentralized web tech, because it'll be better uptime, and the cost will be lower because you're accessing a marketplace of potential hosting rather than just paying Amazon or whatever. So I think that's the final phase. So I don't really expect those folks to. I'm sure they'll be playing around. I'm sure they'll be doing proofs of concept and trying to understand how it works. Many companies are concerned about uptime and are concerned about how their legacy systems work and access to data and all this sort of stuff. So they're all very interested in the subject. I don't think the decentralized web is ready for them yet. I think it's going to start with the nice thing about smart contracts is you're putting your backend on the blockchain. You're really just concerned about front end or very simple backend stuff. So much easier than migrating some gigantic enterprise application, which is probably going to be later phase.
And speaking of that, you guys are an ERC 271, I believe, built on.
720.
Yeah, has the congestion on the Ethereum network affected at all unstoppable domains and these kind of website domains?
It's not great, for sure, when this happens, because it just slows down the experience for users, and that's not great. I have high confidence that key problems are going to be solved in the long term, but in the short term, it's a little awkward for applications, and I think that applications are trying to figure out how to best mitigate that for users. What it comes down to is that fees are higher, so doing stuff costs more. So you're going to do fewer things and more important things. So we're going to have to prioritize. That's fine. We don't we can focus on the most important things for the next couple of years as these networks continue to scale. But that is where we're at, and I think we knew this. This was no surprise. We saw this in 2017. I think it's a lot worse than it was even a few months ago. So it's definitely on everybody's mind, and it is slowing down transactions for our users right now, and we're working on ways to fix it. But it would be nice to have more reliable transactions for sure.
Mm-hmm. And explain to me a little bit how it works. If right now I try to send crypto to brad.crypto, is it spending gas and causing and having to do a transaction on the Ethereum network to both look up brad.crypto to find and connect it to the actual Ethereum wallet address and key, and then another one to actually do the transaction? Or is this all happening in one gas spend?
So the nice thing is you don't need to pay to do lookups on the blockchain. Lookups are free. They're super fast. So you can use the blockchain as, essentially your, decentralized DNS servers that also allow you to look up, crypto addresses for payments, and there's no cost associated with that. So even if the Ethereum blockchain is expensive and you want to be using a domain name for crypto payments, you could send over the Litecoin network, or you could send over some other, you could send another currency and it would be fine. You could send any cryptocurrency. So no Ethereum fees associated with that. The where the cost comes in is really on the minting of a domain or the updating of a website record. Launching a new website would be a little bit more costly. Launching a new, chat account, launching a new this or a new that would have cost, and that's really there'd be first time cost, and that's the reason why you're probably going to start with the things that start with the features that you really want to use. Like spam stuff on the Ethereum blockchain is probably not going to make much sense right now. Mm-hmm. It's going to be stuff you actually wanted to pay for, or you've got too much money. One of the two.
No, that's finally a positive coming out of the Ethereum congestion is kind of filtering out all the spam for you. You guys recently tapped Gemini custody for .crypto websites. Explain to me, what does that mean? What are they actually holding? What are they being custodians for in this decentralized system?
So they're custodians for the domain names in the same way as they or Coinbase are custodians of Bitcoin or Ethereum. And so think of this as like your trusted vault for your domain name. Say you have an expensive one, say you're a traditional brand that doesn't want to, go and figure out how to, download MetaMask and store your own and manage your own private key. So it's a custody service meant for companies. And it would be very hard. The reason why we prioritize this is that it was going to be very hard for traditional companies, even some crypto companies, to be able to manage the process of who controls the private keys. And so what they really want to do is throw it in a vault for a certain period. When they want to use it, when they want to do something, maybe they take it out. But if you're just holding it for safekeeping, that's a better option. So there's a whole bunch of traditional domain registrars that want to sell domain names. So another part of that announcement was 101 Domain, which is a top registrar, is supporting the purchase of domain names for their corporate partners. And so they wanted to be able to offer a custody service rather than saying to these large companies, guess what? It's now time to learn how to manage a private key, which would obviously never happen. So that's the idea. It's just part of the ecosystem. Most of the hardcore crypto enthusiasts probably won't use it. If you were to poll a lot of crypto folks, though, about what percentage of their crypto money they keep in a centralized exchange versus self-custody wallets, I mean, you'd hear a mix, but you would hear a lot of people that are splitting the difference. There's two sets of risk. Mm-hmm. Did I lose my money? Did someone else lose my money?
Exactly. I'm a personal believer of not your keys, not your crypto, but to each his own. For those who actually are utilizing that custodial service, are they then losing out on that uncensorability? Once Gemini or any centralized location is holding that key for them, could theoretically a government come and seize that domain?
Yeah, and so it would not be for the controversial moments, for sure. But not every single person needs access at all moments in time to censorship resistance, but everyone does need a censorship resistant domain name that works like that at the protocol level, because that's what creates the security. And So maybe you want to put it in there for 6 months. Maybe you never want to trust anybody else, and that's totally fine. But it's an important piece of the ecosystem, and the crypto community would not have been able to have grown to the level that it has without having those types of custodians too. So it's a necessary piece of the ecosystem, but no, it's definitely not for everybody, and it's definitely not for the use cases and the moments in time where you're actually concerned. And I think the need for that type of tech may be reduced over time as the UI and the UX gets better, and that's a good thing. The easier it gets to manage your own keys, and the easier it is to create multi-sig schemes and things like that work for us, the more you'll see people transition, and I think that'll be a good transition, but a slow one. So.
Right, and on that note, I mean, I do tip my hat to you guys for tackling this UI UX problem, which is, I think, such a core one, such a basic fundamental one in cryptocurrencies. This idea of, hey, what the hell is this wallet address? Send me some money. Hold on, let me go and copy and paste it from my wallet. And you guys have done a tremendous job of attacking that problem by giving readable crypto addresses for people to make payments, and I do think that is a major push for mass adoption. Last question before I let you go: what is next? I mean, you guys have seemingly the Corona has not slowed you guys down. You guys have made a tremendous amount of announcements, improvements, and pushed forward in 2020. What is next for Unstoppable Domain?
So there are a couple of things that are cooking that I can't talk about just yet because they're not quite ready, but. I think what you're going to see in general is you're going to see a lot more integrations on the website. There's just a lot of excitement on the decentralized website in terms of places that you'll be able to view websites, and then a lot more tools to launch websites. Because right now we're in the the GeoCities phase. We're in like 1995 right now. Like you can build a profile page and that's it, and it's gonna get a lot better, a lot faster. So I think it's gonna be mostly in those two areas: more places to see websites, more tools, and decentralized web in general. When I talk about decentralized web, I mean payments, crypto payments. I mean websites. I mean communication. Like it's all part of the decentralized web. It's all coming together as one. And crypto payments are going to be a lot more powerful when they have a lot more of this context. So crypto payments aren't going to happen in isolation. I'm going to know who it is I'm paying in a lot of these contexts. Not necessarily know their name, not necessarily know where they are or who they are. They could be pseudonymous, but I'm going to
I wonder who Brad.crypto is.
Now, I've outed myself on that one.
Yeah, you've lost all anonymity, man. You've announced it to the world.
But I do have another domain name that's not associated with my real identity.
All right, very cool. Well, Brad, thank you so much for taking the time and helping explain to us how this all works behind the scenes, as well as what's next. And for all our viewers at home, for Reimagine 2020, I'm Yonah Hochhauser.